Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mindset and Muscle podcast. I'm your host, Keshi, and today I'm here with Amanda to talk about a wide range of different topics, really, depending on how, again, the conversation flows, but mostly about kind of connection, relationship, loss. Basically, we'll see how it goes and where it goes, but really being able to kind of like keeping an open heart for things and like maybe managing conflict a little bit. So that's the direction where I thought that we could take that. We're going to talk about Amanda's new book as well and all that good stuff. But before we get started, hi Amanda, how are you doing today? And to just tell us a little bit more about you and what you do and yeah, everything that we need to know.
Sure. Hi, I'm Amanda McKoy Flanagan. Thank you, Keshi, so much for having me on today. It's always an honor and a privilege to be able to share my story of grief and my healing around that and how it actually really affects and has affected all of my relationships in a very positive way. At first, it wasn't so positive, but I am an author. I released my debut inspirational memoir, self-help personal development book last May. Actually, it's been over a year already. I can't believe how fast that
Wow.
went. But it's called Trust Yourself to Be All In, Safe to Love and Let Go. And it's about basically how grief can kind of entwine into our relationships and affect really every part of our life, and specifically in those relationships by possibly for some of us creating a fear of future loss, which then
Yeah.
kind of keeps us out of really loving wholeheartedly, feeling fully connected on a deep, vulnerable level. Um, and I didn't know that my brother overdosed 6 years ago, and I didn't know that I really his death kind of propelled me into healing not just grief, but from his death and other deaths, but grief and loss from childhood, all these other experiences that I had throughout my life and traumatic experiences that I didn't recognize as loss, but in fact was loss. And it helped me to heal so much more than just my pain over my brother's death. And I'll probably get into that a little bit later, but I'm also a podcaster. I have my own show. It's called Soul Rising, all in on love, loss, and connection. I started that about a year ago, a little over a year ago as well. Um, and what that show is about is it's about how human emotion serves to connect or disconnect us from ourselves and others. I do 2 shows a month. I have one show with my co-host, Ginny Oliva Smith. She's amazing. We have really, really awesome chemistry. People say all the time, like that we just really have a great thing going, she and I. And then I do one show on my own per month with a guest. So yeah, we just explore all different emotions. Doesn't have to just be painful ones or trauma or loss or grief, but just all of them, and how we need to really, as a society, well, first personally, and then it kind of reverberates into the society, look within, go deep within, be willing to feel everything that comes up, the good, the bad, the ugly, and really meet ourselves in those emotions. Because when we meet ourselves, then we can meet others where they are. I can't have compassion for you if I don't have compassion for myself. I can't. I will judge you if I judge myself. If I feel shameful inside, I will look to shame you. So it's all about healing within, so then we can help just really the collective. So it's about how healing personal pain helps heal the collective. And that's also kind of what my book is about. So that's mainly what all of my work is about. I've recently become a certified intuitive grief coach. It's actually just the certification is for grief coach, but I'm also highly intuitive. I kind of dabble in some psychic medium stuff and past life stuff. And I'm an energy healer. So I could do Reiki and chakra cleansings and stuff like that. So I bring that piece into the grief coaching as well. I plan to. I haven't actually worked with anybody yet. I just got my certification a couple of weeks ago. So all of that will be ready to go in the fall, and hopefully I'll be taking on some clients and helping them to heal their pain with the vision of turning that pain into purpose, or turning that grief into gratitude for your life or for the time that you had with your loved one, and also and bringing you to a new purpose. So thinking about what kind of legacy you're going to leave, um, and how the grief has changed you for the better, and how you can then use that to really step into your purpose and your mission, because everybody here on the planet right now has a mission, and has something to be doing, just like you're doing, Keshi, with your show, and getting messages out there. So I want to help motivate and inspire people to do that through looking at their grief, using that as a kind of a jumping off point. So that's a bit about what I do.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. And I want to get started with like emotions because you talked about that. So the main question that I had while I was listening to you talk about, I guess, like what you do and like a little bit about why it's important. But I kept thinking, how much should we feel? In that sense, I mean, some people like myself have a lot of emotion, very emotional, very sensitive. I feel like if I just always tune in into it, it would just take my whole life.
Hmm.
And I would just, I need some level of being able to control it. And yeah, not always be super emotional. On the other hand, some people just try to hold everything in. And then, well, we all know how that's not great either. And you have to allow yourself to feel things. So how much should we feel? Where's the balance? How do we know when we should maybe just keep a little cool, calm, and collected at that point, and when should we maybe just let go a little?
So it's really about trusting yourself that you can show up in those emotions without being completely thrown off balance. And we talk a lot about balance in this personal development world that we're both in. And it's hard. I mean, balance, I don't even know if it's ever truly a thing, like 50-50. Like
Right.
it's just kind of always a little bit more leaning toward one side or the other, whether that's like feeling or not feeling. And I, like you, I'm the same way. You're probably an empath. I'm very
Mhm.
sensitive as well. I pick up on a lot of energy. I'm really very perceptive and in tune with kind of everything that's going on around me all the time. So you know that I can show up in life, in the world, in relationships, in with myself, right? Seeing my inner self, and know that I'm not trust myself to not get like sucked into that. Um, Space where it's going to be debilitating, or like paralyze me, or get me into a place of fear where then I'm not going to be able to move forward. So if I'm feeling myself get sucked down into that, then I have to just step back for a moment. So it's kind of like test the waters, like stick a toe in, like see, okay, where am I at today? Like I'm not going to be able to handle it every day. So it's really checking in with yourself. I find the safest place to do this work is in meditation. Um, it's in a place where you are connected to something greater than yourself that kind of will carry you through, and show you what you need to see when you need to see it. So just to trust that things are going to be revealed to you when they need to be, and that you are in control. So when something is, kind of feeling overwhelming or whatever, just to step back and to move a muscle mindset and move a muscle, change a thought. So if it's getting to be overwhelming, if I'm getting sucked in, I'm getting sucked under, and I feel like I might be going to a depression, or I might be feeling too much anxiety, try to flip your perception or shift something in your day, your action. It's all about action. So stop doing whatever you're doing, go run an errand, go do a little movement, get some exercise, maybe cook yourself a meal, watch a show, read a book. You don't have to be tuned in all the time. I
Yeah.
actually, right? Like I actually just, my last podcast that I put out is called Divided We Fall, and it's about how we the people, like the mess what's going on here in this country, are responsible for really, we have to look at that and be accountable and how we're contributing to all of this. And when I say to be tuned in and to be engaged, I don't mean with the news. I don't mean even with that. It's about yourself being like, not to check out on checking in with yourself. And when you're checking in with yourself, where am I at today? How am I feeling today? am I able to go into these spaces that might seem a little bit scary? And if I'm not, okay, there's always tomorrow, there's always next week. So it's basically just about honoring the stuff that comes up when it comes up, because it's trying to get your attention, and it's coming up at a time where there's a reason that it's coming up. Um, so just to basically honor yourself, honor where you're at, give yourself that respect and say, okay, can I move into this right now? And if it's too heavy, there's wonderful therapists out there. There's people, professionals who can walk you through this stuff and can help you keep things in perspective. So it's about not overblowing every emotion or everything, and kind of looking at it from a more objective lens. I guess that's another good tool. Looking at it from almost like a bird's eye view of, like, if I had a friend who was going through this, what might I tell them? Right? It's always a lot easier to look at things when they're not exactly happening to us. And we may have this great advice or this great method of walking them through it that we can't apply to ourselves because it seems so much bigger and so much more important because it's happening to us. So if we could bring ourselves out, like zoom out and take like this bird's eye view and just kind of discern, okay, what's going on here? What's the situation? And how can I look at it almost a little pragmatically, like a little bit more practical, like not from this heavy emotionally charged place. So like literally picture yourself like zooming out. Like I'm saying, as I'm saying that, you can't see me, but I'm like pulling back, like I'm pulling like my body back, like, okay, almost not like separated. We don't like dissociate, but like that's you looking down upon, like looking into, having some introspection into what's going on, but you're not like fully sucked into it. I think that allows you to separate a little bit from it and make a more, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Just objective decision on how you want to go forward, without the emotions driving everything.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for this very elaborate answer. I really like the point of like maybe just taking a minute and not having to react like immediately, just like meditating a little bit and doing something else, because that definitely helps. Like exercise definitely helps as well in terms of it's not like ignoring it, but not everything has to be felt immediately or reacted to, even if felt, but like reacted to strongly and immediately. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, it should not be reacted to immediately. You're
Yeah.
100% right, because we're just not seeing it very clearly, right? If somebody
Yeah.
says something that
Exactly.
bothers you, upsets you, they say pause and pray, or, count to 10, and 10, I mean, 10 seconds, you
Right.
take 10 days if you want. You don't have to respond. You don't have to respond at all if something's bothering you and it really, somebody says something. But like, yes, giving yourself that space. And when I used the word respect before, that's kind of what it comes down to, is saying, I'm allowed to like not respond or take whatever time I need to figure out how I want to approach this. So yeah, definitely not to just react immediately.
Right. And now I'm thinking about like after like a breakup or something, that's something that a lot of people I feel struggle with knowing what basically what to do like emotionally. So there's so many feelings that just come crushing in. And I feel like there's phases of maybe some people have some anger, definitely a lot of grief. Whether or not it was like a happy relationship before, there's so much happening. So then like I also heard you have to feel it. You can't just kind of like move on immediately. But then on the other side, I've heard it's only gonna like I guess hurt for as long as you let it hurt. So if you decide that it's just gonna take 3 months, it's gonna take 3 months. If you decide it's gonna take a week, it's gonna take a week. So then I'm like, well, what is it then? Do I just like switch off my emotions and try to like I notice that when I do that, I get a little cold, and that's not who I like to be personally. And a lot of people, especially, I feel like I talk more so to people who relate a little bit more on like the empath level, very like sensitive and stuff, very caring too for other people. And we don't want to, because we're turning our hearts off when that happens, to not be that like happy, bubbly, caring person that we are anymore, just because we are scared to hurt. But on the other side, hurting because we feel everything so strongly, it can just feel like literally a bleeding heart, and it feels very like the dark tunnel.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's a again, it's like you allow yourself that time to feel the pain, to grieve, to be sad, maybe to be angry. You totally, I mean, you could be angry. I mean, we look at anger as like this big thing that is like dark thing that like we shouldn't go into. Like we're human beings and we're going to feel angry. So allow yourself, it's part of the grieving process, right? It's the first denial, then anger. So you have to go through all of that. Um, and and you don't, like we said, you don't have to be in it 24/7, but you should also not avoid it. I personally don't think that I can set a timeline and say,
Okay.
okay, I'm just going to feel it for a week and that's going to be it. That's my head. That's my logic. The feelings
Okay.
reside in my heart, right? They're in me. They're in my spirit. They're in my soul. And there's something that if the breakup happens, or whether it's romantic or even just a friendship or
Yep.
with a parent or something like that, it's worthwhile to take a look at yourself and say, well, why didn't that work out? What part did I play in this? And look at that honestly and do whatever work you need to do, over however much time you need. Be alone for a while. I actually think being alone for a while after romantic breakups is probably a good idea to really see yourself and heal whatever it was that you were bringing to the relationship that made it not work out, so that you don't bring that same thing into the next relationship, right? Like there's so many people who, why do I keep attracting the same kind of guy or girl? Why does this keep happening to me? It's because you're subconsciously seeking these things in people to actually try to heal you. That's what partnership is about. So you're going to just keep repeating that pattern until you see
Yeah.
what it is in you that needs to heal. So if you just jump from one relationship right to the next, you're not giving yourself that time. Like give yourself that time. You deserve it. You're allowed. It's self-care. You're allowed to take care of yourself in that way and say, okay, maybe they did this and that and broke my heart and whatever, but why did you attract a person like that? Or why did you stay for as long as you did when you saw the red flag? Or right, there's so many things that you could look at in relationships that don't work out, to help you heal, so that then you don't, it just, you don't just keep having to experience this broken heart, because that's all these relationships are trying to do, is just to teach us more about ourselves.
But how do we do that? Like, I understand the point of like, well, I can't tell you if it's going to be a week or like a couple of months and stuff, but how do I know, or how does that person know that it might be time? And then also during that time, because I'm assuming we don't just like sit around and just kind of let the time go. We have to like do the work as well to
Hmm.
heal. So I guess like how do we do that? And then how do we know when it we're ready to move on to the next relationship and it hasn't been too soon in terms of like emotionally it hasn't been too soon.
So it's really, for me, it's real. I'm not like, so I have a master's in social work. I've been through a ton of therapy. I know about cognitive behavioral therapy. I know about a lot of different, trauma treatments and stuff like that. But for me, it's really just more intuitive in terms of getting really truly honest with yourself and say, like, yeah, I knew that. I saw that, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to pay attention to it. I tried to convince myself that they were somebody different than they were, or right. And then digging and digging again in meditation, going to your higher self, going to a higher power or God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it, and and saying, show me, reveal to me what why I was attracted to this person, why I stayed for this long, what do I need to heal within me? And then do some journaling, do some writing about it. So like it's very helpful for me is writing. So it's like I'll start with something. Either it's probably, if I'm being honest, it'll be like anger or frustration or like irritable or whatever it is. And I'll just start writing and it'll probably be blaming them. And then at some point when I get kind of like halfway through, something shifts and the truth is revealed. So it's really about opening yourself up, connecting to something greater than you. I call it high frequency energy, connecting with that high frequency energy to say, okay, show me. I say, fix my ears, fix my eyes, show me what you need me to know. And then something is just kind of like, whoa, I didn't see that before. So I rely heavily on spirit. Yes, there's tons of cognitive, there's tons of logic, there's tons of things that we could do that way to dig in there. But it really starts with just getting really, really honest with yourself. Look back on situations, replay, conversations and say, or, look at your actions or look at their actions and then really tune into how you felt in those situations. And maybe if you would have honored and listened to how you felt, at that time, you would have either, you would have maybe avoided some of the heartbreak, or you would have just grown in some way. So it's showing up for yourself when these little inklings, when these little nudges, when these little knowings happen, and honoring those things, acknowledging those things, and saying, okay, yeah, I need to take a step back, or I need to look at this thing more clearly. And asking for, talking to friends, sharing, asking for advice, right? God speaks to me through people. So if I go to somebody and I say, hey, this happened and it made me uncomfortable, or I didn't like this, or he hurt me, or she hurt me, or whatever, and if I go to people who I trust, they're going to tell me the truth. They're going to either share their own experience, or they're going to see something in me that I'm not able to see. And then I have to get really willing. Willingness is a huge part of this, being willing to then say, you might be right, like that, actually, that I may have done that, or my, childhood abandonment issues, or other pain that I'm carrying, traumas or whatever, might be playing out in this relationship. I think if we all just kind of quieted down and really were willing and honest and like wanting to see and seek, right? Seek and you shall find, the answers will be revealed. It's just a matter of, like I said, getting as willing and as honest as possible.
So now I guess like a little bit of a more difficult question, I would say, what if? Because we talk about like finding maybe what the person said or did, or what we did or said, and again, that period of anger and stuff. But there are cases where it, it's not really like a red flag necessarily, but just the people aren't compatible. That might, like, I'm thinking of a few points, as in like children, like not agreeing on that, or like maybe religion, not agreeing on that. So it's not really like
Mhm.
the person did anything wrong. It's literally
Right.
just like, okay, maybe we're not unfortunately gonna like meant for each other, or one person's like going away for a long time and we're like, yeah, well, maybe that's not going to work out, and we'll basically having to break up. I'm thinking of also like friendships and family, but I think that's less likely to happen in those cases
Yeah.
because yeah. But so like mostly I guess like romantic relationships, I feel like sometimes in those cases it even hurts more because you're trying to like, you're like, I wish you did something wrong so that I could blame you. Like that
Mhm.
would have been
Yeah.
easy. In that case, it's
Yeah.
not, but it still hurts, I
Yep.
guess, so bad.
Yeah.
So then do we just like look for, I guess, why it wouldn't have worked out because of those?
Well, yeah, I think, it- finding, somebody who's going to be compatible with you is and have some sort of foundational, common belief systems, right? Like that could also be a thing, whether you said kids or what,
Right, yeah.
real big desires and things that you want in your life that don't match up. It could another, having different belief systems could also be a deal breaker. So I think it's a matter of, before you jump into a relationship or really get emotionally invested in this person, you probably should talk about those big ticket items like right off the bat, and realizing that you deserve, um somebody. You don't have to settle, right? You don't have to settle. The right person is out there for you. The more right you get with yourself, and in tune you get with yourself and a higher power and the universe and whatever, that person's just going to come into your life. So instead of trying to make it work, or shift really, or sacrifice with some things that are really important to you, before doing that, the work that we're talking about, doing this work to really get to know yourself and to stand strong in your own power and in your own self-worth and in your own, I do not have to sacrifice. I do not need to live in fear that I'm never going to find a person who's going to match up with my ideals or wishes. Um, that's just fear, and we know fear is a liar. So if you do a little bit of this healing work, or you kind of see, okay, I need to stand strong in my own sense of self, and know that I am lovable and I am worthy and I am wanted exactly the way that I am. And that once you really get to that place, it's like law of attraction. Then you're going to attract somebody into your life that's going to have similar beliefs, similar desires, similar wishes for whatever the relationship is going to look like long term. So it's all about meeting yourself, trusting yourself, knowing that I do not have to change these core needs in me to satisfy somebody else, to feel loved, to feel wanted, right? The more we feel that ourselves, the less desperate we are to get that from somebody else. So once we're standing in that self love and that self worth and that personal power, then we will align. That person will complement us. They won't be serving those needs. We serve those needs ourselves. And then somebody just shows up that they've already done their work too, right? They're already in that good space, just like we are. That's when a healthy long term, I believe, relationship can happen, because you're not looking to each other to get these needs met. It's like this desperate attempt to like fill a void or fill a hole or something. So we got to do that ourselves first. And then when we're there, we're going to find somebody, just almost like magic, that is going to complement that. um and then that's when the real beautiful, pure, loving relationship can happen, because there's no undercurrent of, well, I need you to change for this. I need you to change to fill this need for me, because we're already safe in our own skin. We're already safe in who we are. And that's really attractive. That's probably the most attractive quality in any human being, is being able to stand strong in your confidence of, I love myself just the way I am. And yeah, of course, yeah, there's, like we're saying, things need to, sometimes we need to heal things, we need to change things, we need to look at things. But when you get to the point where you're exuding that energy, that's what it's all about. It's all about energy. So the energy is going to be felt. Even when you walk into a room of people, into a party or work or whatever, it's going to feel different. And though your interactions with people are going to be different, because there's not going to be this like need for somebody to make you feel whole or better, and you can be able to show up authentically in this, like I said, this state of confidence and self-worth. And then that just creates healthy relationships all around, romantic, friends, coworkers, family, whatever, when you're showing up in that energy.
Right, but is the grass like always greener on the other side? Because I feel like a lot of people now we're a little individualistic in the sense that we're like, yeah, well, that person, whoever it is, like has to accept me however I am or whatever, like, or I'll always find better. But then there used to be a time where people would get married and then kind of like make it work, and I feel like now we also don't even try that hard to make it work.
Mm,
There's definitely like a balance of, I
yeah.
understand like if I'm not saying you just always have to stay in a relationship. I'm just saying like you always have to leave a relationship for like just because we don't agree on something or just because there's like a conflict or somebody made like a I don't know, a mistake in the way they like express them. Like I guess like no, nothing is perfect. No marriage is ever going to be perfect. So I'm kind of wondering, I guess like my main title here is like, is the grass always greener on the other side?
I love that you're bringing this up, because I feel that there's this idea out there. It's like we're almost like, encouraged to cut and run
Yeah.
whenever, right? Whenever anything is not, when that person is not showing up exactly how I need them to,
Yeah,
because, right,
whenever it's a little uncomfortable.
yeah, whenever it's uncomfortable, they're showing us their humanness,
Yeah.
and we're just sort of encouraged, like, well, you deserve better. And it's like this sort of entitlement that like society is
Yeah.
perpetuating. It's bleeding into this personal development world. And it's actually not helpful, because you're not allowing yourself to experience all the things that we're talking about right now, how these relationships kind of show you who you are or what needs to heal and all that kind of stuff. So if I'm automatically just running away because I'm unhappy with something or I'm uncomfortable, like you said, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. So it really,
Right.
at least stay and try and do the work. That's my story. Like I thought I wanted a divorce 6 years ago, and
Mhm.
my brother had just died and my grief was playing a part. And my husband said, well, your brother just died. Do you think maybe,
Yeah.
there's something to this? And for me, it was that my brain was telling me, yes, the grass is greener somewhere else because my husband's 12 years older than me. He's a 9/11 first responder with chronic respiratory illness. So my brain told me, Amanda, he's next to die, and we don't ever want you to have to
Oh.
that pain again. So
Oh.
we're just going to
Okay.
kind of grieve him now and grieve the marriage and get rid of it. But thank God I did the work. I at least was
Yeah.
willing. I wasn't excited about it. I was really
Yeah.
convinced that I didn't love him. My brain just really played this nasty trick on me, and
Yeah.
my heart and my soul. And really, it opened up all this healing of generational dysfunction, all that kind of stuff about these messages I was getting about love and loss. But I'm so grateful that I said, you know what? Yeah, and I was also sober 12 years at that time. So I'm like, you know what? I know that like usually what presents on the surface is not really what's going on underneath. So went to marriage counseling, and it exposed this major fear. But yes, I was falling right into that trap of I deserve it all. I deserve everything. I deserve love. I deserve
Yeah.
this because my husband has PTSD, which is well under control right now. He did something called rapid resolution therapy, which is a form of hypnotherapy. And in like three
Okay.
sessions, he's just a whole different person. But if I would have said, you know what, I don't want, you have PTSD. I don't like that about you. Da 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 da. I'm out. I would have missed out. I would have missed out on this beautiful family. We have these gorgeous two girls that are just brilliant and amazing and creative and smart and happy, and like we have each other and this connection that we have with each other, that like I can just be whoever I need to be, whoever I am for that day, and he accepts me and loves me and supports me, and in a way that he probably always did, but I never really allowed because I never felt kind of good enough. My journey is one of just kind of finding unconditional self-worth and self-love through my pain. But if I would have just cut and run like that to say, well, I deserve better and I deserve more, that wasn't the truth. It was, I'm in fear. I'm in fear of more pain. So we always
Yeah.
have to look at whatever's presenting on the surface, a little bit of introspection. And like you're saying, we don't need to stay in it and get bogged down with it forever, but it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile to at least take a look and say, why am I feeling this way? Is this really the truth? Or is there something else that's nudging me, guiding me, forcing me to believe this? Sometimes, don't believe everything you think. We cannot believe
Yeah.
everything we think. And that also, like you say, I love your questions and I love the way that your mind works because, like, we're also taught trust ourselves, trust yourself, trust your right, trust
Yeah. But
your
yeah.
intuition, trust your my book is called Trust Yourself to Be All In. So it's about trusting yourself and your intuition. But I also say in my book, but I also check that with
Yeah.
others. I go to God, I try to tune in, and then I go to my friends and I go to people in my recovery community and I say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? So
Mhm.
not just running with the first thing, but really getting to a place where you can trust that because you've kind of checked it. You gut checked it with yourself, you took it to God, you took it to people, you kicked it around, not just impulsive. And I'm a little bit impulsive. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like that whole like I don't love you, I'm out kind of thing. That was came kind of out of left field. So I had to look at myself too and say, well, traditionally I'm pretty impulsive. Is that playing a part? Right? So yes, trust myself, but not immediately. Not the second I have a thought,
Yeah.
you know?
For sure. That kind of makes me think of I guess an analogy would be when you're going out for shopping and like you see something and sometimes you're like, "Oh yeah, I'll get it right away." But if you wait 24 hours, but that's still on your mind, and then maybe a week and still in your mind, then you're like, "Oh, maybe okay, maybe I should get it." But most of the time it's not. So if it's something that immediately you're like, Okay, let's wait a little bit and assess the situation and see how it is. If it
Hmm.
gets better, if I feel differently about it, or maybe it was a big deal and it needs to be addressed, and that could happen too, but just yeah, that no, that makes sense because that was something that I was like, well, how do we know? Like, can't just always run, or we'll spend our lives running because we're different people. Like sometimes different cultures. Because I come from a country called Mauritius. Now I'm in Canada, so everyone here is like very different upbringing from what I had. So I can't
Mhm.
expect them to be like a perfect puzzle match, especially without like a little bit of compromise on both ends,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah, but
definitely. And I usually say like when I talk, so I'm married for a while, but when I talk to my like younger friends who are dating or whatever, I say like, you're not or having trouble in their own marriage. Let's
yeah,
say really it's not realistic to think you're going to be able to check every single box.
yeah,
It's just not. It's just it does takes a little bit of compromise and a little bit of sacrifice that you're not going to get everything the way you want it all the time. And again, back to society's message of this entitlement of I'm allowed to have everything right now exactly the way I want it, right? Like you could go like on Amazon and find like you could dream up the craziest thing and like you could find it in like the exact pattern or color. Like we can get everything like exactly the way
yeah,
we wanted at our fingertips all the time. And I think that that rushing into things like you're saying or reacting quickly or being impulsive, whatever, or um, you know, it's not serving us. So it's going to take a lot of discipline on our end as human beings to kind of separate that like what's going on in our minds. Like our minds are kind of being reprogrammed a little bit, I would say, to
yeah,
because chemicals released when we get that quick fix or when we get that thing that it just feels good. So to kind of just pause again, there's a saying, everything looks better in the morning. And that is 100% true. So like sleep on it, right? Like all those kinds of things that you're saying, like we are talking about, like to not make that decision too quickly and to know that, yeah, it feels anxiety is driving so much of this too.
yeah,
W
yeah, for
Right?
sure.
Like, we want to make that decision because we wanna know where we stand with a person. We wanna have control in that situation, take control of something and take an action or do something, say something, because then we're gonna know what the outcome is gonna be. We're cutting right to the chase. We're getting rid of that uncertainty. We're just jumping right to a solution. Okay, well, now I know how to feel instead of staying in that kind of uncertain place for a little bit, giving ourselves that time to kind of swim around a little bit, explore different things, even though it might feel a little, anxiety provoking. That's okay because in the long run, right? Like that's what we're talking about. Like being in discomfort for a little bit in the long run is going to give you better results that you're not going to keep finding yourself in that anxious place over and over and over because you're going to learn who you are. You're going to learn what works best for you. And then in the next situation that comes up, where that anxiety is or that question mark is, you're going to know what to do over time because you're going to look back on a frame of reference. It's called a frame of reference and say, well, that happened and this is what I did and this worked and it worked out better or, whatever. So just to give yourself that time and to trust that like you're going to be okay, like you can get
Yeah,
through a little bit of discomfort.
yeah,
Or
absolutely.
what's the alternative? Staying on the hamster wheel and just
Yeah,
continuing the same patterns? That's just painful. It's painful either way, really.
yeah,
But the pain is going to end at some point if you kind of push yourself to stay in that discomfort just a little bit longer, and then retreat and get comfortable again, then go back in a little bit and then maybe retreat again. But if you don't go through that process, it's just pain, 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 pain. It's never going to end.
right. And we also like talked about compromise, and I'm like going back and forth in terms of kind of like the side that I seem to be on, but that's just because I don't really I'm looking at it from like different people's perspective. So not every
Yes, that's
one
good.
person would not like relate to everything. But so now in the sense of like compromising, I noticed that a lot of very sensitive people who are also like empaths. It's just like we notice when even other people are having like are low feeling lower or like are happy or like I don't know. I always think of it when I see somebody as like everybody has like a little fire around them and sometimes I just see them and that fire is burning very low or something like that. So like
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of empaths they tend to compromise a lot more. So kind of it's not really like if we're thinking of like the percentage of the time that each person does, empaths tend to do it more than like that 50%. Like, okay, everything is like a compromise, and it's like end up being not getting what they wanted to, whether that's like, and I'm not saying this one does not apply just for romantic relationships. It's really like family,
Mhm,
siblings, like parents, like everything, friends.
mhm,
Oh, where you want to go out, where you want to eat. It's like, oh, okay, well, I would, I don't like Chinese food, let's just say. And then
mhm.
my, let's just say my brother says, yeah, but like I don't really like that food, or like I kind of really want Chinese food or whatever. And then I'd be like, okay, sure, I guess we can go. Like that's just an example. It doesn't have to be like that kind of black or white, but usually I notice that people who tend to be empaths tend to be like, okay, you know what? Like I don't have that strong of an opinion on like that, again, the food or the whatever that we're going to do. So sure, we'll go with your option. So then I think sometimes that they're not standing their ground in some cases. So how do they find kind of like that balance of like, yeah, compromising too, but sometimes also being able to do what they want, or if they are in a relationship or even like with a family and they're watching movies and stuff, so it doesn't happen that they're never watching the movies that they want, or they're never choosing the place to eat. Or those are really kind of like very casual basic examples. It can get deeper, but really like it seems like sometimes they're never really having their way in terms of what they want to do.
Yes, yes. So I think what you're speaking of is codependency. And I think what happens with, well, codependency, for people that have not heard that term, I think a lot of people do know what it is, but it's that people pleasing to an extreme, to where you're basically
Mm.
sacrificing yourself like over and over and over, because all we want to do is be loved and be wanted and be liked. So
Oh,
we're
that's interesting.
yeah, so we're constantly giving in and being codependent. So making decisions based on not what's best for you, but what's best for them.
Yeah.
Um, One way to kind of sidestep all of that is thinking about, okay, what's on like a, not just movies or food or something like that, but like on a deeper situation, maybe like what you don't do what's good for you, you don't do what's good for them, you do what's best for the relationship if you care about the relationship. So that kind of takes the codependency out of it. Like even if it does wind up being what's best for them, it's not going to be all the time. It's not going to
Yeah.
be all the time what they want, right? It's going to be, if you put every decision through that lens, sometimes it's going to be what you want, sometimes it's going to be what they want, but ultimately it's always what's best for the relationship. So I think
Okay.
that's one way. And I think empaths, so we're, a lot of us feelers are because we've suffered some kind of wound in childhood or trauma or pain or something, or maybe even in a past life. Maybe people don't even realize why they feel this way, and it's something coming back from that your soul needs to heal or whatever. So our spirits kind of contracted to feel this stuff so that we could grow and heal whatever needs to heal. So I think when we have, especially in this life, if we have pain in childhood, you know, think about a child. All they want to do is make their parents happy. All they want
Yeah.
to do is get that approval and that attention and to feel loved. So when we don't get that as children, which I think many of us have suffered in that way, that are empaths, we just carry that right into adulthood. We carry that through all of our relationships, like you said, not just romantic, but with friends, with family, with whoever, with boss, coworkers, whatever. We're
Yeah.
always even strangers or acquaintances, right? Like we're just so conditioned to want to get that approval, to want to get that acceptance and that love, because it's just something that we're always going to be searching for if we don't get it from our own parents. So the solution to that is you got to get it from yourself. You got to get it from within. It has to come from within, so that, again, like what we talked about before, like you're not constantly seeking for this other person to fill your need. But so
Okay.
that can often push us into that codependent place of always giving in and always saying that, it's, oh, okay, we'll do whatever you want, or, um, because then we think they're going to like us, or they're going to be happy, or we're going to avoid conflict, right? A lot
Yeah, I
of,
was gonna say that. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of us are also really scared of conflict. We don't want conflict, and we just want peace because we're very uncomfortable with the anxiety really that comes from. I think so much of our culture, our world, whether it's Canada, America, everywhere, I think we're all suffering from like massive anxiety disorders, and people don't even realize that that's what's driving all the quick responses, all the codependency, all the whether you're nasty or you're too sweet or whatever, right? Like that's why we're so out of balance, is because we're constantly trying to quell the anxiety. So yeah, I mean, how, you're I love that you talked about the word, and the word compromise keeps coming up a lot. And it's like, yeah, we're not always gonna get what we want. Like that's just how it is. And maybe there's a lesson in there, right? Maybe if I'm always thinking that I should be getting things that I want, all the time or whatever, then maybe there's something that I have to do involving checking my ego, right? So it's a
Yeah.
balance. It's a balance. And I'm not saying that just because you want something your way, like it's also healthy to get what you want, but if it's a little bit out of balance and so it's a give and take. And if the person that you're in a relationship with is just demanding that it's their way all the time, you don't have to stay in that relationship, or you
Yeah,
can
fair, yeah.
and you can rearrange the dynamic. I talk about that a lot, of changing the dynamics in relationships, especially with parents or siblings or whatever, friends. You can go from the roles can change. You don't have to stay in those defined roles that you've had forever. You can say, okay, like with a parent, for example, like, okay, now we're just going to kind of be friends. Like we're just going to view each other as friends, especially when we're adults, like that kind of parent child. Yeah, always parent child, but you can you can transform that relationship and shift it into something where those expectations change. Really, that's what it's about. We expect certain things because we've defined these roles, that you're this person to me and you should give this to me, or I shouldn't have to do that for you because you're the parent or the child, whatever, or you're the older sibling or the young, whatever it is. um Getting rid of those roles, it kind of creates a fair playground where people can just be like, okay, I'm just going to show up and be the best that I can be in this relationship because it's who I want to be. It's not because you're expecting me to be that thing. It's because I want to be that thing for myself and feel good about myself, that I'm not doing this to please you. I'm doing it. Maybe I am giving in, or maybe I am compromising and doing what you want, but it's because I want to show up as a loving person that doesn't always need to get my needs met all the time. Right. So it's
That's
about,
good. That's nice.
right. It's like shifting, it's shifting the perspective.
Yeah, I like the shift in perspective. When you were saying about like not having to stay in that role, I was like, ah, that's I have like so many follow-up questions on that, but fortunately we don't have to because it's almost one. But like for example, for parents, it's I feel like people in North America have a different idea of that than um I guess like again I was brought up in Mauritius. Like I kind of like going away and like getting away from parents and kind of being like separate from them. That's not really it's different. It's not something that we really do. Like for us, like family is I kind of think of us as a little bit of a pack alliance. So like it's
Mm,
not something that you just like, okay, mom, I guess I'll just see you at Christmas. It,
mm,
we don't want to, but and again, not everybody maybe, but um at least the people around me, it's kind of like, no, that's something that we cherish and we stay in it even if it's not like kind of perfect. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have time for like those follow-up questions right now. But it was like so great about like everything we talked about. I know again, you kind of like bounce off and on. And I feel like that's kind of how my brain works too. Just like talking about something, and I'm like, hey, I have a question on that. Hey, I have a question on that. So really, thanks
yeah, I'm
for
sorry. I'm sorry if I bounced around a lot. I go and like I try to, and like if you saw what was going on in my brain as I'm talking, I'm like, okay, Amanda, remember what you was talking about. Remember,
yeah, no, I feel that. I feel
remember to
that
answer
so
the
much.
question.
Because I'm like, oh, I don't even know if that will be kind of like applying to what we're talking about, or if you are able even to answer what I'm asking. But I'm like, I'll ask anyway. And if you don't know, you don't know, and that's okay too. But thanks for kind of playing with me as I was going on all this different like different tangents. That was awesome. And before we go, tell us more a little bit about your book, Trust Yourself to Be All In, and just about where people can find you and everything, and if you want to add any kind of last things do you want to add. So the floor is yours right now.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, you could find my book on Amazon. If all you remember is my name, Amanda McKoy with a K, Amanda McKoy Flanagan, and Trust Yourself, You can go on Amazon and find it there. It's also on my website. Everything is at Amanda McKoy Flanagan. Again, McCoy with a K. And then it's on Instagram, on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. Those are my main two platforms. And then my website. My Soul Rising podcast, you could find on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, everywhere that you listen. And I really just want to thank you, Keshi, and for all the listeners that, if you've made it this far in the episode, I really appreciate not just the listening to us speaking, but for caring, for
Yeah.
caring enough about the world, really, because it's what the internal work is going to. This healing is really, I believe, the only solution at this point for a harmonious society. So thank you for being interested in doing this work, and I wish you many blessings and tons of healing. So thank you for
Thank
having me.
Thank you very, very much. And I will put all the links in the description as well. So yeah, even like how you write McCoy, McKoy, but I will put everything in the description, the show notes, so it's easy to
Thank
access.
you.
Yeah, and yeah, for everybody listening, again, thank you very much for being here and stay here until the very end, I guess. Always a pleasure. Let me know if there's anything you want to hear about. I feel like even the name of the podcast, I will end up changing it to something more, not vague, but I just want to learn so much about everything. So, not restricting it to a certain niche, but being able to listen, have guests like Amanda, just talking about a wide array of different things. So, again, thanks very much for people listening too. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.